Good evening, everyone. This is Hengis Satanta Smoochworth. This is the second installment on my series of how foreign governments are influencing American public opinion. Last time I covered how petro-dynasts like the House of Saud or the Al Thani family of Qatar are spending millions on American universities in order to promote Islamism, or at least Islam. Several think tanks of great renown have also received millions from these same two families. I also covered how the Communist Chinese have been using their financial influence to reshape the structure of Hollywood companies as well as censor plot lines. This video will focus on another method the Chinese have been using to influence American public opinion. For the sake of clarity, I believe it is important for me to restate my central thesis. I think the investigation into Russian meddling is myopic. Firstly, several metrics indicate that Russia is not a great adversary. In the last few years, its GDP has declined precipitously to the tune of over $1 trillion. This economic shrinkage has also led to the curtailment of plans to increase her military spending. It is believed that Russia spent a total of $46,000 in order to generate the Facebook ads that have created so much controversy. A sum of $46,000 would be meager in a congressional race, and a fortiori in the presidential. Despite this economic handicap and the paltry spending on influence, Russia is still the center of our investigation. I wish to show that the only justification for such a focus on Russia is partisan. If Congress truly wants to strengthen the stability of our electoral system vis-a-vis foreign powers, then it must cast its net much wider than it currently is. The influence and importance of print media, or legacy media, is universally acknowledged. Indeed, it is acknowledged even by the Communist Chinese. The crown jewel of Chinese influence peddling in the United States is ChinaWatch, and ChinaWatch has come to influence every member of the fourth branch of our government. If you have read a major American newspaper in the last several years, chances are you have come across ChinaWatch, and chances are you may not even have noticed. ChinaWatch appears regularly in the Washington Post, the New York Times, and the Wall Street Journal. I've even seen it in smaller publications such as Bloomberg Business Weekly. If one looks carefully, one can spot the phrase "sponsored content" on the top of the page. But that bit of information is easy to miss. A reader could be forgiven for failing to realize that one article or the other is not written or published by the Washington Post, but instead written and paid for by the Central Politburo of China. ChinaWatch could be charitably described as advertorial. However, their goal is far more pernicious than the selling of cologne or bicycles. The headlines and content come straight from the party apparatus. President Xi's endless successes are enumerated in exquisite detail. In addition, ChinaWatch's articles explain to the world how China's foreign policy is truly magnanimous. The culture section is my personal favorite, where one can learn why pandas are awesome, or how Chinese opera is the greatest thing in the world. I'll let you decide for yourself whether that is true. Personally, it's not my favorite. Beyond appearing in news rags throughout the nation, ChinaWatch also has a very special relationship with the Washington Post. Forgive me for reminding you, but this is the paper that boldly boasts that democracy dies in darkness. I would call this irony with Chinese characteristics. The Washington Post has for years taken money from the Communist Chinese in order to run their website. Interestingly enough, the Washington Post formerly accepted money from the Kremlin for doing something similar. That was for a program known as Russia Beyond the Headlines. However, the Washington Post-run website for that institution is currently defunct. I am not sure if the Washington Post's new ownership by Jeff Bezos has anything to do with its severance of ties with the Kremlin. The British rag, The Telegraph, also runs a website for the Communist Chinese. The origin of the content and the money for that website is printed in the smallest font on the website. The PRC is at its bluntest with ChinaWatch. I personally find it astounding that a communist regime has poured millions into our legacy media. And I find it even more astounding that their competitors have not raked them over the coals for this. Is it not a conflict of interest to report on the same institution from which you receive money? How can one trust the Washington Post to report fairly, or the Telegraph for that matter, on affairs affecting the Communist Chinese? Should not also the readers of the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal adjust their level of trust, considering that those papers have a conflict of interest when reporting on the PRC? No one expects RT to criticize the Kremlin, nor does anyone expect Al Jazeera to fairly criticize Qatar. While the Communist Chinese do not own the Washington Post or any of the other publications I have mentioned, I believe that is a difference of degree. The same principle, that is, conflict of interest, applies. I would love to hear how the viewership of this video thinks about these publications with this new information, or if you already knew, how you had adjusted your reading to suit this knowledge. One of the most famous principles of strategy comes from Chapter 3 of The Art of War, and I believe the Chinese Communist Party has been using it adeptly. That is, it is better to subdue than to fight. It is also reminiscent of one of my favorite of the 36 stratagems, 借刀杀人, that is, to borrow a knife in order to kill. I mention these phrases from classical Chinese literature only as a segue into next week's video. There I will show how the Chinese are leveraging their ancient literary canon to boost their influence in the United States and elsewhere. Thank you for watching this, my second ever video. I appreciate all views, and if you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and share. There will be more to come in the near future. Thanks again.